Before we start today's roundtable, I want to give special thanks to Checkster, our group sponsor. Checkster has become well known in the recruiting industry by providing a platform that easily captures reference checks in the hiring process. I myself have been a customer of theirs for years. I use a reference checking tool for all of my new hires. However, Checkster has now released a new product suite called Insights. This new product suite is really what has excited me to have Checkster as the group sponsor. With Insights, the Checkster platform now covers employees from cradle to grave and not just reference checking, starting when they apply, going to offer, through onboarding, then covering their work at your company, and then to the end with exit interviews. It's an easy to use, easy to understand way of giving and getting feedback from your peers. Checkster's simple goal: to build more productive and passionate teams. Now, if this concept of getting insights from your peers regarding your work sounds familiar, it should, because that's the simple goal of this group: connecting, communicating, collaborating. Support me, support the group. Follow the link below, recruiting.org/Checkster. This will take you to a landing page to sign up for a quick demo. If you are just thinking about automating your reference checking process, it'll be well worth your time. But I encourage you to check out the full Insights suite. I'd love to find out if you feel the way I feel about it. Now let's get to today's roundtable. All right, let's jump right into it. I want to thank everybody for attending episode, I think it's 70, and Let's Talk Recruiting, where peer practitioners from across the industry all get together to talk about various topics in our industry. And today's topic, I love my ATS and here's why, is sort of an interesting topic because it is kind of hard to find recruiters that actually love their ATS or even really like it. I think we all have our wants and wishes when it comes to ATS, but there are some good ones out there. And today we're going to be talking about what our panelists like about their ATS, and something, as we all know, we basically live in our ATS on a daily basis. With that said, I am going to jump into it, and we're going to introduce our panelist members. We have Deborah Bamus. Did I get that right, Deborah?
You did.
All right,
Yeah.
good. Out of San Francisco. We have David Lucero out of Denver. Corinne Wilsey. Did I get it right, Corinne?
You did.
Okay, I'm getting better at this. Out of Phoenix, and Beth Wolf out of Birmingham, and Sherry Sims out of Cincinnati. I think Beth and Sherry, I don't think we've had anybody out of Birmingham or Cincinnati, so thank you for being a panelist. So let me stop sharing here. Again, today's topic, I love my ATS and here's why. Before we jump over to Deborah, I just want to give a little quick tally. So I've asked in the past to our group members, hey, what ATS do you use? I was just mentioning before that there's a lot of ATSs out there. Some we've heard of, some we haven't. But kind of the top dogs in the industry, of about 1,000 people who gave me an answer, iCIMS has 30% of the population. Workday has 10%. Greenhouse has 10%. Taleo has 8%. Lever has 4%. So that's sort of the top 5. And then from there, it's like 2%, 1%, on down the line to a rather long list of many companies I've heard of, but don't really know very well. So iCIMS seems to be the big dog on the block with 30%, and then a nice jump down with Workday. I think Workday has been making a run the last couple of years with Workday Recruit, taking advantage of their HRS system. So interesting numbers to see who's really standing out there. I have used iCIMS before. I've used Workday before. I've never used Greenhouse or Lever. I've also used Taleo before. Search the board across them. All right, Deborah, can we kind of start off with you to start the discussion?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Deborah Bamus. I'm the manager of talent acquisition at Era Technology. We are an artificial intelligence company in the supply chain in the field. So we have a software that is a global software, about 400 of us worldwide and growing strong every day. So the software that we use, our applicant tracking here at Era, is Lever. So we make the list, but we're a little bit lower on the list. It's a San Francisco-based company, Lever is, and it's really geared more towards the startup type of company, which we are. What do I love about it? I love that there is so many customized templates. It makes it so easy for the recruiting team to send out emails, and very structured emails, and you can put links in them just through the applicant tracking system. It also works really nicely with Gmail. or Outlook. So if you send a message out of Lever, when they respond, it comes right to your email, whatever you have, and it saves a copy into Lever. And that's really, really nice. It allows me to make master template emails for my team, and then they can save them as their own and add their own signature, maybe rephrase something on how they would say it. So I think that that's a pretty cool feature. And then also feedback forms, highly, highly, maybe too customizable feedback forms for each position that there is. So those are some really good features that it has. Reporting, I wish it was better, but I think most applicant tracking systems are a little bit lagging in the reporting section. But as far as forms and emails, yeah, it's top notch.
Deborah, when you say the feedback form or the forms, are you talking about feedback from managers or candidate experience or
interview? Well, they did just roll out candidate experience feedback, which we haven't enabled yet, but I'm working on that. It's more about the interview feedback forms. You can customize for each role, each region, each stage of the interview process.
And I don't mind. I hope you don't mind if I drill down a little bit in some questions on that. When you're getting feedback from the managers in Lever, is it going specifically to the requisition, or does it follow that applicant if they apply to other jobs to kind of build out their profile over multiple jobs if they've applied over long term, or is it specific to that job requisition?
No, it's actually specific to the candidate. This is something that Lever has changed probably within the last 6 or 8 months. Is candidates, everything now is candidate centric instead of position centric. So if I look at a candidate, John Smith, who's applied to 15 roles, I'll see all the roles he applied to, and I'll see all of the information associated with him through the life cycle of every role that he's applied to.
I don't know if you've ever worked in a system that didn't do it, that made it job rec specific. Oh, but that was so that's what I was going on.
Yeah, this is a really, really great feature that Lever has.
Yeah. And then another quick question, and I don't mean to hog any questions. If any of the panel members, if you want to question about Lever, feel free, I'm sure. But the templates, does it allow you to time an email response through a template? So let's say I wanted to send a rejection to a candidate, but I didn't want it to go now. I want it to go 3 days or when the rec closes. Does it allow scheduling at all in those email?
It does. Yes, it does. You can do that. You can also have it auto-populate certain people that you want it to CC or to go to. Like you can code all of that into the emails as well. Like if I want to get CC'd on everything, I can code that in where I get CC'd on everything. But yeah, it does. You can pick their times suggestions, or you can do a custom time.
So for all the panelists, a question on this: what's your preference when you have a tool that allows you to kind of schedule out email responses? Are you waiting? Because here's what I've seen a lot: recruiters don't let the candidates know that they've been dispositioned out until the rec closes, right? Because they don't want to have to deal with any communications or anything like that. So when the rec gets closed is when essentially the rejection emails would go out. I never really liked it because you leave a lot of people hanging out there as far as candidate experience. I understand why people would want to do that perhaps, but utilizing a tool that allows you to time or schedule responses, what's your general thoughts on to using that tool? Is it when the rec closes, or is it when you're dispositioning out the candidates?
So go ahead, David. Okay, so I was going to say just briefly, and you hit on this, Sean. We're really focused on the candidate experience, and some of the feedback that we had seen prior to COVID was that it was just that people were really upset at the fact of, hey, we went into Abyss, and I'd just like to know if if we're being considered or not. So we really changed our thinking on that, and we are utilizing it at disposition. So even from the onset, if a person isn't making that first pre-screen, we're letting them know and sending that messaging out. And we use Taleo currently, folks. But for us, again, it actually serves as, a good tool just to be able to get it out in mass. because some of the recs, and especially now that, that with COVID, we're averaging, I would say, anywhere between 150 to 200 applicants per position. And then as I look at when we have openings in Emirates, UAE, we're averaging roughly 300 per submittal. And then, we've even had some that it was like 700 applicants for roles. So to be able to leverage that as a tool is paramount for us for that candidate experience.
So David, what's your guidance on time?
On timing, on when?
Yeah, when they get it, right? They come in at 9 o'clock in the morning, your recruiter looks at them at 9:05. How quickly do you disposition them out? Do they get that no thanks letter?
Yeah, it really varies. I can't say we have it set specifically like at 9 a.m. or at noon or 5 p.m. It's really when the recruiter that's working on the requisition, when they're getting through those dispositions. But we try to be as timely as possible so we don't have people lingering in the inbox for, we set our own SLA that, we're targeting to have a disposition on people if they're not going to be moved forward to the pre-screen or secondary, that they're notified within 48 hours of submittal. So we try to do a quick turnaround. Now, are we hitting that 100% of the time? We've been kind of busy, so I think we're probably closer to 72 hours.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I'm not a big fan of immediate disposition and email out. I'm not, because it feels like candidates don't get the consideration. Yeah. So guidance to my team is within 72 hours, but not before 48. So any time between 48 and 72, please send it, but not right away.
Yeah. Ours has a built-in functionality, and the default is 48 hours. Mm-hmm. So you can select immediate, or you can select like 2 days from now. So if you're looking at them, an hour after they applied, you can kind of soften the blow with a 2-day delay.
Yes, we also try to set it where it doesn't go out on a Saturday or a Sunday. Yeah. Because then that's a weekend. They don't want to get that on the weekend. Let's wait till Monday.
No, I totally agree with you on that. And I love the 48 hours too. And that's been our target. But when we're in the way that we've been approaching them as well is, we try to send them out in mass. So it's not, there's 5 that go out and then the next day there's another 10. So we try to compress them as much as possible.
Excellent. Yeah, I'd hate to get a rejection at Friday at 6 o'clock. That ruined my weekend.
But, for a job that you really wanted to, right?
I personally, when I did my last job search, I actually recall getting some like at midnight. And I'm like, now granted, I was up at midnight. I was seeing these come in. I'm like, oh my God, that's the worst possible time to send someone.
Yeah.
That's kind of the reality of recruiting too, right? So I know a lot of recruiters that'll clean up the ATS on the weekends. I always thought if I was getting an email from either a recruiter or a manager 10 at night, 11 at night, I'm like, oh wow, does this company expect me to come in and be working those hours too? So that's always, to me, that was kind of a bad sign. But being in the recruiting industry, I get why people have time to send out emails without having to deal with responses. So you find those off hours to get things done, basically. But as a candidate, that's what I always thought. Oh, I don't want to work here. People are working 11 at night. But, anyways, Sharon, I don't know if you were saying anything. You were on mute there for a second. I don't know if you looked like you were saying something, but you're on mute.
Yeah, I was just agreeing with David and Deborah that 48 hours is the standard time that we have as well in terms of sending out those notifications. And it also too depends on the stage they're in the process too. Typically for someone who has gotten all the way to the interview stage, if we have any candidates that we have also interviewed or have phone screened, we like to send those communications out to them within that 48-hour place before anyone who goes to the interview stage. And anyone else who applies after that, we do hold them or send them a notification and put them on back burner to say we've already begun the interview process. So we will keep your resume. If something changes, then we'll revisit it and kind of keep it on hold just to make sure that the candidate we have identified will accept and start, and kind of keep that pipeline warm at that stage. Okay. So there are certain applicants that we communicate upfront during the process, And then others will do the 48-hour notice. And then others, we may just have in a holding pattern until we see where the candidate we've identified, if they, pass our background drug screening, etc., pre-employment screening process.
Mhm.
And just to confirm, everybody has an ATS that you can kind of set this in the settings, right, to help determine this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
It'd be a huge headache if I'm a
Yeah.
recruiter having to do that for every single email. All right. Thank you very much, Deborah. Hey, Deborah, there's a question in the chat area from Tamara Garlett, kind of to one of your points. Could you take a quick look at that? Because it's kind of in depth on something.
Okay.
David, can we jump over to you?
Yeah, so just a brief intro, folks. David Lucero, Director of Talent Acquisition and People Services, a company called Global Eagle. We're a B2B organization, and our business line is we provide connectivity and content to aviation, airlines, private jets, yachts, and cruise lines. So one would think, oh my God, crazy company. With COVID, all those types of organizations are feeling the impact. But we'll share that we're starting to see some recovery on airlines. Cruise lines are getting ready to go out. So hey, go book a cruise, and you'll see our product lines. So briefly, and I'm going to date myself here. Some of the systems I've worked with: ATS systems, SAP, PeopleSoft, Workday, and then Taleo at my last two organizations, but most currently here as well at Global Eagle. And what I love about our, frankly, any ATS, if it has the good reporting features, the data and analytics that you're able to pull from it, we live and breathe in the data, and in particular, that enables us to have a weekly report to our executives so they can see what kind of activity we have. I should mention we're a company of about 1,000 people, and we're scattered in over 25 countries. So the analytics by country, by resources, and where we're getting our talent, really gives us strong insight as to how we're spending our money from a TA perspective, and really where are we getting the ROI for it. So whether it's a job board or it's virtual job fair, which has been something pretty interesting to have attended the last few weeks. But ultimately, it's for our team, being able to pull data from our ATS is absolutely, again, just paramount to our success, and really noting where we're making strides, where we may be having struggles, and really, again, identifying just that best candidate. The search and filter features, of course, are critical to any system. But I would even go so far as to say, just some of the things that Corinne had actually hit on, just those soft touch emails. And it's not just about dispositions. What we actually do as well in leveraging our ATS is actually pipelining candidates for what, we have seen traditionally as our high turnover roles. So we pipeline them, but once we have them pipeline, we're able to send out messages to that pipeline, candidate pool on the goings on at Global Eagle, just to make sure that we're keeping tabs with them, reaching out to them, being proactive. So that's a critical piece for us as well. And then, we're federal contractors. So again, a lot of the data that's captured from our candidate applicant pool helps us to be able to report out, where it's required to do so. Last thing, and again, to me, this is especially in this day and age, we don't have the AI features in our current version of Taleo. It's an older version, and we're actually getting ready to move to Oracle Recruiting. But if both of these will feed into our HRIS, which is Fusion, which is an Oracle platform product. So again, the fact that those two systems marry up together is really just helps us from the back end administrative, from the point of person being hired and moving in through the pre-employment stuff and then into system. Pretty seamless, doesn't require a lot of, call it live manipulation, minimizes error potential. So again, just a good candidate experience once behind scenes is as key as, in front, on the front end as well. So that is what really kind of drives me through our ATS, why I feel they're critical, and really, again, how they can help us in the day-to-day of what we need to deliver on.
So David, let me ask you a question around pipelining. Right? So I'm a big fan of pipelining, whether you're, you call them silver medalists or what have you, from applicants to being able to source candidates on LinkedIn and it's a not now but later, so they never applied, to get them into your pipelines. How are you using your tool to pipeline your candidates? And I first want to describe how I've done in the past. I found iCIMS was the best tool that I liked the most because they had a very elaborate tagging system where you could tag people through job recs, job families, locations, management level. And then the secret that I always found was, hey, if I tag or kind of designate people in different ways as I go filling recs on a day-to-day, the secret sauce is really, well, how do I go and find those people again? And then how do I engage those people again? But how are you pipelining with your tool?
Yeah, so where ours is a little bit more archaic in that sense, unfortunately, and we're literally we approach it from two fronts. One is it's just an active rec on our careers website, but we don't have it tied to like LinkedIn or Indeed or what have you. It's just a landing site. Then we have someone on the back end that is actively sourcing candidates with that specific profile. So and we have a TA coordinator, and then what she's doing is directly feeding those into these requisitions. Once they're in there, then we have the version of Taleo that we have has a flagging feature. So we can, it's a quick view, and, we could do a filter by flags and by keywords. So again, it's a little bit more of a process to get to, get back to those individuals. But for the most part, what we're doing, Sean, is we're parking them. We'll pull them out of the pipeline rec and into another, we call it a parking rec. So again, just for quick access. And for us, these are, I saw someone ask the question, if we're doing a lot of non-exempt hires, I'd say probably about 20% of our population is non-exempt. So it's not a big population for us, but those roles are high turnover. There's some warehousing roles, accounts payables, accounts receivables, some facilities roles. Those are our high turn roles. Those are the ones that we pipeline for, and they're even specific to geos. So that's another key piece too. So if we have warehouse associates, they're in Florida, we have a very separate rec for them versus the one that we have for our folks in Lombard, which again has that warehouse employee base. But that's how we do it. It is a bit cumbersome, not as fluid as we'd like it to be. But again, that's just the system that we currently have.
Yeah, there seems to be like this tip of the mountain. Once you get there, oh, I get it. This is how it works around some of the premises of tagging or an ATS acting like a CRM. Yeah, the infamous pipeline rec. I've heard that many times in my lifetime. But for all the panelists, are you utilizing your ATSs for pipelining candidates for future engagement?
We actually have a CRM functionality on our ATS. Smart Recruiters is one of the features they rolled out last year, is Smart CRM. So you can build out campaigns. You can utilize tagging to easily filter people into your campaigns. And then you can build out multi-touch campaigns based on the candidate's behavior. And you can even they've recently rolled out some like heat mapping, so you can see when people are responding or clicking into your messaging.
I like that.
So it's got some pretty cool functionality, and they continue to iterate on it and improve it.
Can you run reports on them clicking on it, or do you actually have to go into that candidate record and see that they've clicked into it?
No, there's a dashboard within the CRM, so you can see each campaign and how each campaign is performing.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And you can have multiple campaigns for each community. So you can build your communities based on the types of candidates. So we use it a lot for university recruiting. And we even do like open houses. So we'll utilize that to advertise that and communicate with potential attendees. So you can see who's reading your emails, who's clicking in, who's registering to attend, et cetera.
So I like that. I think it's one of the functionalities that I wish we had with ours. That's probably one of the minuses about our ATS is not having those features. So I really like that.
Not to call them out, Sherry, but which ATS are you using?
I'm using Paycor Recruiting. Okay. It used to be called Newton. Yeah.
Got it. Does anybody use tagging? I've been doing it for years. All right. Most people don't even know what it is when I say it. I don't know if it's because I say it with a Midwestern accent. I had a buddy who made fun of me for it. Can't say
I feel like
tag.
I learned a lot about tagging when I was on the agency side, and then kind of brought that with me to the corporate recruiting. I think it's really prevalent on the agency side because you have to be able to quickly get to those candidates. But I love and live for tagging.
Yeah, if you've never used it, to anybody in the audience, I highly recommend doing a little research into it. It's just an easy way to designate people with certain key factors. It could be location, skills, anything that you really want. If you're a user of JobVite, I will tell you this: they allow tagging in JobVite, but you have to ask their admin to flip a switch to allow you to search by it. When I first started using that, I said, I can sit here and tag people all day, but I can never search to find them again. What's the point of it? Like, oh, good question. And then later, another support person said, oh, we just need to turn search feature on for you. Like, what? I've had it for a year. But anyways, it's there. But I highly recommend this concept of tagging because it just allows you to do it as you go and then to go back in the future use. Real quick question for David around the pipeline rec. Do you ever use a callback rec? And what I mean by that is if somebody says, and this goes back to being in a lot of sourcing teams, as I reach out to somebody, they're interested, but not now, call me back in June, right? We would use campaigns and things like that, but a callback rec or a callback campaign would just, you drop them into your callback in June rec or June campaign. Do you utilize your ATS for that type of callback rec?
We actually are, and it's the challenge. Well, and let me two fronts on this. We are utilizing it. The challenge that we have with it is it shows up on our reporting. And when I first arrived here and I saw this rec that's been open for, I want to say it was like 360 days. I'm like, what's this about? And then our recruiter's like, oh, that's our callback rec. That's where we park people. And they have their notes section in there. But again, we don't. The version of Taleo we have doesn't have like triggers or reminders that we can set in it. So it's a bit manual for our recruiters. They'll put notes in their in their Outlook calendar on, hey, call David Lucero back June 1st and see if he's still available. So it is a very manual process for us. We are actually looking at going to Oracle, as I mentioned, Oracle recruiting in the new year. And some of the features, what I recalled from the demo, Sean, actually allowed you to create, again, a more fluid callback rec. And it did have triggers in there where you could it would send you a reminder. So you could tell the technology is advancing as such where it's making things more fluid and seamless for us. So we're not having to constantly remember, hey, I need to call back Sean or Beth or what have you. But our version of Taleo doesn't have that. It is 100% manual.
Got it. Yeah, the reason why I kind of emphasize that is just being in 2020 with, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think generally speaking, most companies are getting more applicants than normal. So then come 2020, if things pick up, 2021, if and when things pick up again, fingers crossed, hey, you got all these candidates from last year. Are you able to do anything with them from your ATS? I think it's going to be an interesting hurdle for recruiters to work through.
We do a couple of things. We disposition them out. And we've customized those. So we'll do a keep warm or consider for future hire. So we can search on that. But I kind of like the idea of adding a tag that says, add a month in there, and then we can sort by month. And then the recruiter would know to call that person back in that month if they, call them back in February, right? Run a report, call these people back. I think that's a great idea.
Yep. Yeah, tag works just like a callback.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And the beauty of it is, this is why it worked like a charm for me, at least, is you've already had a relationship with them. So it's a shallow one, right? It's just you connected some time. Yeah. But if you send a mass email to everybody in callback June, you can just say, hey, you told me to reach out in June. How are things going now? Right? It doesn't have to be an elaborate email. You can get away with a simple mass email template because you're not being elaborate. And it just works.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, Corinne, let's jump over to you.
All right, so I'm Corinne Wilsey, and I'm the Senior Manager of Recruiting at Insight, and currently I focus on our diversity and inclusion outreach initiatives. Insight is an information technology services provider, so we sell hardware, software, professional and managed services to our customers globally. We have about 11,000 teammates. A majority of those are in North America, but pretty strong presence in EMEA and APAC as well. And we actually use success factors, but I'm going to speak to iCIMS because I know there's a lot of you on here that have used iCIMS, none on the panel, but several of you that have responded that you use iCIMS. And I didn't realize how much I appreciated it until using success factors. So I actually came to Insight through an acquisition about a year ago, and that's when I was still using iCIMS, was at PCM. And what I came to realize was how much I appreciated the reporting function. I know Deborah had mentioned, it's really hard to find an ATS that has strong reporting. Is it even out there? And when we went through our implementation with iCIMS, it was by far the lengthiest implementation I have ever gone through. It was 6 months, very intensive, a lot of calls with our technical account manager to really customize it however we wanted to. And they kept stressing, customize this based on reports that you're going to want. And at the time, it didn't make a whole lot of sense, right? But then once we got in there, we had all of our recruiters set up, we realized you didn't just have your standard reports, but you had a custom report to really any piece of data that you wanted to find. Any recruiter or admin, anybody who's willing to learn the reporting functions could generate a custom report. I actually went to a 3-day all-intensive iCIMS training at their headquarters in New Jersey, and it was needed. There's no way I could have utilized the system to its full extent without going to that. And that was only part one, right? So I can't even imagine had I've gone to part two. But when I talk about custom reports, we are also a federal contractor. So of course there's the standard, click and run your report, but it never seemed to be enough for what HR was looking for. So by being able to customize the reports, I could add any field, put them in the order they wanted. So I didn't have to export and then fiddle around in Excel and try to customize it and change it from there. I could do it all in the system, save it. And then the next time around that they came to me and asked for that report, it was a click of a button. And in 30 seconds, I exported and I was done. What really, got me to fall even more in love with this was come acquisition time. We actually ran both ATSs for a year. We migrated over into SuccessFactors pretty quickly, but we did keep iCIMS live for a year, just in case we needed to get in there, right, and still access information and determine how we were going to move things over. So when I worked with iCIMS and said, how can I move everything over? I want everything. I want the candidate notes. I want it all. And they said, well, we simply can't do that, right? You're not going to be able to track all your interviews. There's no way to do that. And I realized there's got to be a way. I've gone through several different acquisitions and we've lost information, unfortunately. And so, looking at their different backups, they just weren't efficient to navigate. So what I realized was I can create reports. So I went in, created a custom report. I sorted, by recruiter, what rec titles there were, rec IDs, what department it fell under, whether it was public sector, sales, technical, added in any candidates that were associated to that rec, all their contact information. I could go as far as date of birth, like if they had their social security number in there, I could even add that, not that I felt the need to, but you could get that granular. And then you could even add in their last status they were in, the first status they were in, if they applied to other recs, any interview notes, any candidate summaries that were attached, and you had it in Excel, hit run report, and you had everything in a couple minutes.
Corinne, did you ever so it sounds like you got your elaborate Excel reporting or into Excel, which I'm a big fan of. It's great for scorecarding. Have you ever moved your reporting, whether it's from an ATS or after it's into Excel, into a business intelligence tool like a Tableau or a Microsoft Power BI? You ever drop your reports into one of those?
So personally, I have not. We do have a pretty extensive HRIS team. And so because SuccessFactors is so difficult to navigate within and we can't do a lot of those custom reports, so we have a team that does this. So what I did was come time of acquisition, I pulled everything, I sent it to them, and they did actually put some of it into Power BI to help with our demographic data. Because the other thing we found too was Insight was really great at tracking demographic data where PCM wasn't. And so they tried to move everything over, see what we had, and we actually realized we fell short, which there was no reason for that because certainly iCIMS had the capabilities to attract all that information, but we just weren't tracking it.
Yeah, I'm starting to understand Tableau and how you can get information in there. Usually, you go BI tool, you got to do an API into a system, but trying to, just because I know ATSs, you got to play with it so much to get the report that you want, even to the point where I've taken them out, kind of massaged the data to get it to be readable or reportable in my personal feeling. but then dropping it into a BI looks interesting. So if you love reporting, I highly recommend you check out those BI tools, even if you got a team to do it, just from your perspective.
So I actually don't love reporting. I do not love reporting. I love iCIMS capabilities to help with reporting because it's a necessary evil. But yeah, we actually, so right now I've now moved on to the diversity and inclusion team, and everything we're running is through Power BI. And we're fortunate because of the business we're in, we have a ton of data scientists. And so, you know, I can navigate through Power BI, but when it comes to getting really granular in there, they're able to help me out with that.
Oh, I thought I found one of my kind. Apparently.
No, Sean, I love reporting. I love it. I could just go head down in a spreadsheet all day and reporting and data. Yeah.
Well, then you should check out BI tools.
I should, yes.
Corinne, back to you on the DI focus now. Is your, whether you thinking about iCIMS in the past or just what you're using now, is it helping you in your DI efforts, D&I?
So it is, and that's actually part of why I've realized SuccessFactors has a lot of challenges. Now, we won't move away from it because we're just, you know, we're so entrenched in it. It would be an extensive implementation to go into something else for the whole company for everything that does roll through SuccessFactors. But unfortunately, what I found is, you know, if I go to the HRIS team and I ask them to pull a report or include demographic data or a certain time frame, I'm waiting 2 or 3 days to get a response. Whereas I know if we had iCIMS, I could have done it in 5 minutes. So it's a little frustrating, but unfortunately, that's, you know, we are using SuccessFactors and Power BI to leverage to be able to get to that data for our DI measurements.
Yeah. So okay. So have you? And this is for all panelists. So D&I is a big topic in the industry right now, right? It's going to be there for the foreseeable future. I like in the past, I've seen, like I used to be a CRM guy. There's a question about ATS and CRMs. This was back in 2006. I customized Salesforce.com for recruiters to blend into the ATS, but now ATSs have CRM features, so that has all gone away. So I'm a big fan of that integration for it. But around, my point is, ATS has stepped up and started implementing CRMs because that's what the industry was asking for. Are we seeing any ATSs stepping up in addressing D&I issues in the industry? Or is it just kind of business as usual, hope you can figure it out with our tool?
I haven't seen it in SuccessFactors.
I haven't seen it either.
Yeah, not in ours either.
Because I mean, I've done D&I reports before, but basically I get 2 things, gender and ethnicity. And that's kind of it for the most part that I have found to get accurate. And that's all self-identified information. So pulling from the back end, that's the only way I've been trying to use data to engage that effort that others are doing. Yeah, I haven't seen, I'm hoping they will as they stepped it up in other ways, but it usually takes a couple of years. But if anybody sees anything that addresses that specific issue in any way, I mean, I'd love to hear about it because I just haven't seen it either. So.
Yeah, so I guess I shouldn't say that it doesn't address in SuccessFactors because we do pull a lot more than that. Like you said, it is all self-ID. And so we're working towards potentially rolling out a training for our teammates that encourages self-ID because it's only as good as what they're going to tell us. But we have seen self-ID increase quite a bit. So when we export our data, like I said, we utilize Power BI. We have an outside vendor, Hudson Man, that helps us analyze the data because we pull it, right? But then what does it all mean and what do we do from there? But we can break it down. We look at it very granular, right? So we're looking at our demographics between leadership roles, executive roles, all the way down to the bottom and seeing where are our gaps, right? Do we not have enough females that are executives? Do we not have enough Asian Americans in our cloud data center transformation division, right? So we get super, super deep on what divisions, what locations, what levels within the organization do have a gap.
I like that.
We're small enough where we don't need that. We can just look at Bamboo HR and look at the pictures of people and we know, like we just know also where we have gaps. But it is something that we're really, really actively working on. We have a DEI initiative that we're working really hard on right now. It'd be wonderful if there are more tools to help us get there, though, as we grow.
It's interesting to see how many.
Yeah, I know for.
Go ahead, Sherry.
No, go ahead, Sean. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I don't want to get off on a whole other topic, D&I, and this whole other series that we're doing of conversations, but it's very good to see not just big companies trying to do stuff, but even smaller size companies already addressing the issue and putting forth effort around that. To your point, Deborah, okay, now let's give some tools rather than just spreadsheets. So I think what people are left to see. Point is, it's good to see the smaller size to big size companies with defined efforts. Sherry?
Yeah, I was going to say that the organization that I work for, we're about, probably our headcount's about 550, is where we are. And so we're just now starting to embark on focusing on D&I, which is one of the projects that I'm taking on to do that. So yeah, I'm glad to see that we're at the growing stage. When I started with the organization, we were at about maybe 220. So we've grown quite a bit in the last couple of years. And so we see there's going to be exponential growth for the next 2 as well. So I think this is a good time to start implementing something from a D&I perspective.
Yeah, definitely get the framework in there before you get really big, right? And then the problem is bigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. This is a great time to start doing that now.
One little wish list I had them for ATS companies, maybe Workday is ahead of the game because they have the full suite, is if I'm recruiting for a position to be able to look inside my own company with a search. Right? If I'm doing a search in my ATS is one thing, or outside on LinkedIn is one thing. But if my search can incorporate existing employees from their previous resumes or their current positions, they try and recruit from within. Right? Enable the recruiter to recruit from within by looking into your own company's headcount, current headcount. That's a wish list item. Haven't seen that one either, but I'm sure if I'm putting my money on Workday.
I do like that.
Yeah, so trying to. We're digressing into a whole other topic. I don't want to do that. Sorry about that. Beth, before I go down a rabbit hole, can we jump over to you and to your item?
Sure. So I'm Beth Wolf. I'm the director of recruiting for a company called Daxco. We make software and provide services for the health and fitness industries, like gyms and fitness centers use our software. We're headquartered in Birmingham, but we have team members all over the US. And we're about the same size as Sherry's company. We're about 550, although we've grown quite a bit. I've been here 6 years, and we were at 160 when I joined. So a lot of growth, and we've been through a couple of different ATSs in my 6 years here. We're currently on my favorite, which is Smart Recruiters. We moved over. The one we had previous to this was Silk Road, which I was not a big fan of. The UI was very dated. There was not much updates as far as functionality in the several years that we were utilizing them. And so we jumped over to Smart Recruiters. We're coming up on 3 years now. And one of the things that I love the most about Smart Recruiters is it feels like it was actually built by recruiters and not as like an add-on function. I feel like a lot of ATSs feel like a second thought to a bigger functionality that they have. You know, it's some other HRIS system that they're like, oh, well, we need to add a recruiting, so let's give them something. And it feels like it was built by engineers and not by recruiters. Whereas Smart Recruiters to me from the get-go felt like it was built by somebody who understood my role. And one of my favorite things about them is their feedback forum. So they have an online community where you can provide feedback, give ideas, that sort of thing, which most software companies have. But I've never seen one that actually like did anything with that feedback. You feel like you're just like screaming into a void of your frustration about this functionality on your ATS that nobody ever responds to. Whereas the Smart Recruiters community feels like they actually are in there, they're reading your comments, they provide updates when they are doing releases, like this is going to be included in the new release that's coming out, and they do quarterly releases. So you actually get to see things that are happening. So things like the CRM, that's been added since we signed up. Texting was recently adding that we didn't have before. They've recruited, or they've increased reporting. They've added task management and built-in SLAs, so you can have those reminders like, hey, this candidate's been in this stage for this many days, you need to touch base. So all those things are features that they've rolled out just in different quarterly releases that they didn't have when we started with them. And that's one of the biggest things that I appreciate, is just a company that's not like, hey, we built it, whatever, go use it. They're actually wanting to improve the functionality and features that they offer.
Beth, I know that
That's great. I'm excited about that system now. Because I have to say that I like Lever, but it's built by developers, right? Who don't think like a recruiter. They think like a developer, which is, we all know, is so different.
Yeah, it's super user friendly. And then one of the things that I do love is that they seem to like really have a heart for like recruiting as a function. The software, they actually have a free version. So if you're at a company that's less than 50 people, you can actually utilize a good portion of their platform for free, which I just love. Christina, it's called Smart Recruiters. I love that. And then I've been to a couple of their user conferences. They do a lot of what is called like reverse recruiting. I don't know if you've heard about that, but it's really about like proactively going after underrepresented people and folks like ex convicts and felons who have come out and who are having difficulty finding work. They set up opportunities for those folks to meet with recruiters who have potential openings. So they're just like really involved in the community of recruiting. They're not just a tech company.
Nice.
I like that.
Was there one feature that stood out to you among all of them?
Oh gosh, texting has been huge right now. Because it just speeds up that time to like get interviews scheduled, those types of things. That's been a really big impactful feature for us, because I mean, a lot of our recruiters were like texting on their own, personal lines a lot of times too, just to kind of speed that process up and reduce that time to fill a little bit.
Yeah.
So that one has been really big. And I would say the CRM has been really helpful to just, like I said, utilize that campaign feature, make it easy. We do like regular newsletters that we can easily send out just to say like, to keep us top of mind and stay in touch with those candidates.
So the text feature, so you're texting through Smart Recruiter, correct?
Yes.
And it stores the dialogue within the candidate record?
Yes. So there's a tab for messaging. You can have, emails, and then the next tab over is messaging. And you can do it like if you have candidates who are not in the US, you can use WhatsApp, since that's a more popular texting feature in other countries. So we don't have any right now, but so we're just using regular SMS texting. But they have an option, like when you initiate the conversation via text, they have to opt in to like allow you to text them through the system.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's always good to have a responsive vendor. I once had coffee with the CEO of an ATS, and I had all this list that I ran off, and I never heard from him again.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Same. That was what our frustration with Silk Road was. It was like we had all these things, and I had gone to their event or their user conferences and spoke with people and said like, this is what you're missing. This is what you're not doing right. Like, what are your plans? And it was just like crickets. And again, that was one of those companies that I felt like they were more focused on other functionalities that they had. They had a big onboarding tool, and they had some other tools that I felt like they were just much more focused on, and recruiting was very much the afterthought.
I think the timing because Smart Recruiters is a relatively young company, so now's the time to be responsive, right, to those user needs to set up your design. Once you're too big, it's harder to do.
Yeah, and we actually looked at we looked at Lever as well when we signed with Smart Recruiters. We looked at Lever and Greenhouse as well. Lever at the time was also very new, and there was just some integrations that they didn't have at the time, but we also really liked Lever. And Greenhouse I loved, but was just way too expensive for our budget at the time. It was going to be just a really big jump from what we were currently at, and my CFO just was not going to go for it. And Smart Recruiters was a nice kind of happy medium for us.
I've been to one of their conferences. They put on a good conference, good content, what have you. All right, Sherry, let's jump over to you.
Yes, so I work for a company called BrightView, and what we do is we support people in their, for addiction. So we have addiction treatment centers that we have across the state of Ohio and moving into Kentucky. And so what we do is we staff for those clinical roles, for the sites, for operations, clinical, also for our nursing side, and then anything in our corporate office as well. And so we use Paycor Recruiting. When I first started a couple of years ago, we were using ADP, which was a complete nightmare for us back then. And so I was glad to see that we were able to upgrade, and then we upgraded to the Newton system, which is now Paycor Recruiting. Paycor itself, of course, a lot of people know about the payroll system that they use. They're pretty popular across the country, and they're headquartered here in Cincinnati. Paycor Recruiting is great. I think what I love about it the most is that you're able to go in, and our hiring managers are able to go in and look at their requisitions and see candidates in every stage of the process on one screen. They're able to toggle over their name to see when they would then schedule for an interview, what stage they're in, what's the next step in the process. They don't have to do a lot of navigating through the system. A lot of it can be in just one. They can get a quick snapshot of everything going on with the candidate on the same screen. So it tells the story of where they are. So I love that a lot because it keeps our team from not having to explain much. I have a team right now of 3 recruiters and a talent acquisition coordinator, and then we're bringing on a sourcing specialist. And so with them, between the 3 of them, their rec loads can be anywhere between 30 to 50 recs a piece. And so it's great to be able for our hiring managers to see what's going on with each individual candidate in real time on one screen. And saves us in training as we bring on new managers. One thing I love just like Beth is that we have a texting capability. So we're able to use texting a lot. It does record the conversations and puts it into the comments section so we can see it in real time. And that for us was something that was implemented maybe about almost a year ago with Paycor Recruiting, which has helped us tremendously in the communication. And like your team, Beth, before we were using our cell phones, to text candidates, and now we're able to use the feature, which has been a game changer for us. I wish we had a CRM, but we do not with the system, which would be nice since we're moving into the D&I space and kind of putting more focus on that. But so we'll probably have to be looking at some other options for the CRM. But one thing I love about the system too is hashtags that we use. So when we send our hiring managers a resume to review to see if we want to request for them to go to another stage or the phone screen stage in the process, they can review it. They can be they can be logged into the system, or they can be looking at it on their mobile phones. And if they can, you open up the attachment, look at the resume, and if they want to move forward, they can just reply with hashtag phone screen, hashtag interview, hashtag pass. And it will automatically move them to the next stage within the system through responding in the email. So I love that.
Never heard of that.
I think that's an awesome feature. Yeah, it works really great, and they can just respond again. And because what's nice about it is that we work closely in our organization because we are small. Our team works closely with our C-suite. So we have a lot of engagement with our chief officers and our VPs quite often on a daily basis. And they're the ones who are on the go. Their schedules are hard to fill with interviews. And so being able to have that feature while they're on the go is amazing because they don't have to take time to log into the system. They can just respond to the email, with that hashtag, and it systematically will move them through the process, which for us saves time. And so that's probably one of my favorite features with using Paycor Recruiting is that the hashtags that we're able to use through that process. And I think the one thing that they're working on right now is the Zoom integration. I don't know if any of your other applicant tracking systems that you use right now has that Zoom integration. But of course, since the pandemic, we've moved to the video interview process where we've set up an account. But now what they're doing currently is working on integration with Zoom, so we can continue to schedule our interviews through the ATS system, and now also be able to also schedule using the Zoom integration through the ATS, so we won't have to stop through, in our ATS to schedule the interview and then go over to Zoom and schedule the Zoom over here, then cut and paste the information back into the interview information, emailed it to them. It's going to streamline that process all in one. So they're currently working on that integration right now, which I'm happy about.
Sure,
which is a time saver for sure.
Sure. Does your company use Slack?
We do not use Slack.
Okay. The only reason I ask is I've seen companies who do use that, the hiring teams start to do their process in Slack. So I'm just wondering if ATS is going to start intervening some way with Slack. Sorry.
Smart Recruiters does.
No, we use Microsoft. Now, how would you
really
use that? Because
that
that might be something we could think about doing. Really,
we haven't.
I know
Like
Microsoft Teams, we do a lot through that.
We started to look at it, but what it does is it creates a channel for that job. But we have people who are on different hiring teams who are on multiple positions and already are on multiple channels and that sort of thing within Slack. And it just kind of got a little bit overwhelming to manage it there. So we decided to not really utilize that functionality that way.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. I just think it's a whole other place where you got to manage a whole lot of things as a recruiter. But hey, Sherry, I have a question with your hashtag. So if you submitted a resume to a candidate, they haven't phone screened or anything like that, and like, oh, let's bring this person in, they can just hashtag interview and then the process kicks in place? Is that simple?
Yeah. Now we do vet the candidates first before we move before we submit the resume to the hiring manager to review. So and once they looked at the resume and felt like, okay, this is something we probably can maybe start to to really probably see if they're going to be a good fit, they'll move into the process. So we don't blindly send the resumes to them to review. We've looked them over first to see if they have what were the basic skill sets we're looking for, at least the minimum on paper to move them to the next stage. So yeah, there's some review before they get to that next step. Now, we do have a lot of our hiring managers are kind of intimidated by using the hashtag. And then we have some who they live and breathe by it. So that's the way that they move them through the process once we get them to the interviews, once we get them past, before we get them to the interview stage. Once they get to the interview stage, then we no longer use the hashtags at all. But anywhere between review stage and up to the phone screen or interview stage is where the hashtags are mostly used, which is helpful for us.
And this sort of goes to everybody. Does their ATS do click and drag or drag and drop? Sorry. Can you drag and drop on any of your screens from move one candidate to the next stage or anything like that?
No.
No swipe left, swipe right.
No.
That's common. I swear somebody's gonna be putting that.
We have a thumbs up. We have a thumbs up, thumbs down that can move them to either pass or move them to the next stage. But no drag or anything like that for us.
Is your thumbs up green and your thumbs down red?
Yeah. There is. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I worked in a VC role, and I had to send to billionaires positive or negative affirmations, and that's what it came down to. I just want a thumbs up or thumbs down.
Thumbs down, yeah. And that's what happens too, is that they'll use, our hiring managers, they look at the green thumbs up or thumbs down if they're actually logged into the system, and they will use that. They'll use the thumbs up or thumbs down for pass, but we don't allow them to go in and send notifications to our candidates. We manage that piece, but they can pass on the candidate using the thumbs up or thumbs down.
Has anybody ever heard of Trello, the project management software? Okay, Beth, you have?
Yes.
So that's kind of what I'm relating to, because I know hiring teams if they're not in the ATS, they use Trello to kind of move their candidates along the way. And I'm starting to see that kind of migrate its way into, well, if the hiring team's in there, as a recruiter, then I guess that's where I got to be. But that drop and drag is it's a cool little feature that people like to engage with. All right, coming to the hour mark. Thank you everybody for going for so long. I didn't think we'd be going this long today, to be honest with you. Given the topic, I'm fully ready to admit that, hey, you got to work your best to get it out of the most out of your ATS. But any final thoughts or comments around ATSs or anything like that? Nothing? We all good?
We're good.
All right. I know we lost two of our panelists due to time, I get that. But again, I appreciate your time and everything and participating. I'll let you go. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a great week. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Everyone, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.